every step of the way, every choice I had to make kept moving toward faith leadership.
Welcome to Tiny Pulpit Talks, this episode of our podcast here at First Unitarian Church of Dallas. I am the Reverend Beth Dana, your Minister of Faith Development, and I am here with
Reverend TJ FitzGerald, your Minister of Community Care and Engagement.
So in this episode, we wanted to talk a little bit about minister call stories, specifically Reverend TJ's call story. You know, how did you come to be a minister here? Where did that journey begin, TJ?
Where did it all go wrong? No. That's such a good question. One of the things I tell people first is that I was never far from church.
Yeah.
I grew up in a Catholic family, Irish Catholic family, and my aunt was a nun. I have a distant cousin who was a priest. I mean, I had cousins that lived in a sort of an intentional commune and raised kids there. I mean, we got a religious family, first of all.
Okay, you're steeped in it.
Yeah, steeped in it. That's the first thing. And I think I was always going to church, although often escaping church. I used to make deals with my family that I could leave after communion because I get too antsy to stay for the announcements. So I would get communion and go out the back door and climb on the trees. I mean, it was just a constant negotiation with trying to get me to go to church. Do you know anything about that?
Sounds pretty typical with a lot of kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
How old were you?
7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, then when I was making the deals.
Yeah. They all just want to go out to the playground.
Right. Exactly. And at my church in Connecticut, where I grew up, we didn't really have a playground. We just had trees out front. So that was part of the first thing I tell people. I was raised church, and in college I met a guy, and we were dating, and he was Methodist, and we started trying different churches. We did an Assembly of God church, which I didn't realize that they spoke in tongues, and which is
that
great.
Was a new experience.
Yeah, it's a spiritual gift, and it was. We both were just because he was just very low key Methodist, you know. And so that was my first time really going more regularly to a wide range of different churches.
Yep.
And that was when I started to realize that there was even another kind of religion other than Catholic. Although here in Texas, my friends, when I'd sleep over at their houses, sometimes I'd go to church with them. So I went to Prestonwood Baptist and all kinds of big, churches. So I was starting to get that idea. And then my cousin, Therese, she went to divinity school as a Unitarian Universalist.
Interesting.
And that was what started to crack a little bit of my seeing a real pathway, a real journey. I visited her.
Yeah. Had you heard of Unitarian Universalism before your cousin became a Unitarian Universalist minister?
I had studied, when I read The Oversoul, junior year.
Emerson. Okay.
Yeah, Emerson is what did it. So, yeah.
In college?
No.
In high school?
In AP American. So we had American Studies. So it was a 2-hour period, junior year of high school, that was co-taught between a history and an English teacher. And it was because it's really hard to separate American history from its literature.
Yeah.
And so they co-taught those two subjects. And so sometimes we'd have 2 hours of history, sometimes 2 hours of English. And the Oversoul, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I think.
Yeah.
That I was worried was a heresy.
Yeah. But it's actually a religion.
It's just a thing. There's people that believe this and go to church about it, Also, I had the advantage of growing up in Rochester, New York, where it's in high school. So when I looked around and said, because people that don't know, there's an amazing church in Rochester, New York, with one of our colleagues, and with a building by Louis Kahn. I mean, it's it stands among the many churches of the city as one of the main churches. So living in a city like Dallas, where there's a large church, also in my mind helped me realize this is a real faith.
Yeah.
Because in some communities, it's like a cabin off the outskirts, and that's fine, and it does a lot of good. But I'm just talking about my journey, that realizing, oh yeah, there's this prominent church.
Yeah.
And I think that helped me also see that possibility. And then I went to law school. I had this kind of detour of where I wanted to make a living. I wasn't sure that the spiritual life was something that I could make money at, and I was in this whole capitalist idea of that you have to make money, and the more money you make, the better you are. I mean, I went at my 20s, you know.
Sounds like it just kind of felt like more of a legit career choice at the time.
And the kind of law I did,
Yeah.
I worked with artists and inventors, and it was a very nice life, which is part of why I think I know that this call is so real for me, that it pulled me away from a kind of law and a kind of life. I'm not trying to, like, you know, convert anyone or whatever, but like, I had it pretty good. Just gonna be real.
Yep.
Like,
and you left that.
I left it. I had clear sailing, as you know, partnership track, the whole thing. Well-known clients and everything, and
the call was strong.
It is, and I just, you know, because I was a member of a church in Manhattan. A Lutheran church that was very liberal. And I was on the board, and I was doing all that kind of lay leadership stuff. And at some point I started seeing, because I was on the board and I had to prove the stuff, I was like, oh wait, ministers actually make a good living. Not like a lawyer, but you know, they do okay. And I was like, maybe this is a life I could actually have. I'm sorry to be so brass tacks about it, but that's one of the things. And actually, I went to a talk at the Rochester church, and the former president, Peter Morales, was there. And he just told me, he goes, oh yeah, it's a great living. Like, I've enjoyed it. It's like if you're called to do it.
Yes.
And I think that's the most important thing. And then when I realized that I was called to be a minister, I was thinking about it in the Lutheran church. I was thinking about it in other things, and then someone invited me to a concert at All Souls on the Upper East Side in Manhattan, and I went to the choir concert on a Saturday and was just completely blown away by what was in the hymnal. Yeah. The E.E. Cummings and the all these different musicians. Rumi is in there, and and Marcus Aurelius, and Dr. King, and all these things in the hymnal. And I was like, what is
what is this?
Is this real? I mean, it looks real, you know. It's like there's and so I came back the next day, and it was the coming of age service, and I stayed for both. I couldn't believe this is what was going on. I stayed for the first one and the second one. This church was right down the street from me the whole time. Yeah. And I didn't.
And you'd just been walking by.
I had just been walking by and doing other stuff. And when I saw the way the congregation respected, listened to, treated, trusted the words of the children, including the one girl who I'll never forget said, because it's the coming of age credo, and you're supposed to say what you believe in, and she was like, I don't believe in anything. And people in the congregation were like, yeah! And I was like, what is wrong with these people? It's like, or what's right with these people? Yeah. And they kind of sold me from there. So it was always that experience of seeing how valuable and how valued the young people are to speak their minds and take part fully is what did it. And that was kind of from then on, it was like this branch that sort of came off in my life or on my palm or whatever, that just every step of the way, every choice I had to make kept moving toward faith leadership, kept learning for deepening my learning. I mean, there was other things in there, like you grow up, you go through some stuff in life, and at some point I also started to trust sort of in other parts of my life that spirituality was a much stronger answer to some of the problems I was facing than fixing them was. Like working on the problem, and I had to move more toward a solution. And I found a spiritual solution to things in my life that, to me, proved the truth that a spiritual life is real, and that if we live it, the virtues and the rewards are tremendous. And so you went to seminary, and how did you end up here in Dallas, TJ? So I went to seminary up in Connecticut, and I applied to a bunch of internships, and the only one I got that I could actually support myself at was in Portland, Oregon. I did that for a year. Then while I was in Portland, someone asked me if I was willing to move to Hawaii to be the minister
What an invitation.
there. What an invitation. So I did that for 5 years. And while I was there, I don't know really how that all happened, but I got a call from Daniel who said, hey, I understand you've lived in Texas before, and I understand you've got some of the qualities we might need in the next few years in a place that can have a bit of an aggressive stance toward liberal people.
Yep.
And so when he found out I was a lawyer and that I knew what Texas was and I wasn't afraid of Texas, he said, why don't you come for a year and try it out, and then you can apply for our open position that we'll be searching for.
Yeah.
So I came, and I was an interim for a year. Seems to be the way people end up here. Yeah. More about that.
I'll share more about my experience later. Yeah.
And I applied for the job because I love the people here so much, and I love the work here and the colleagues and everything about this place.
And we love you, TJ.
Well,
I'm glad that
thanks.
you ended up here.
Yeah. So that's a bit of how it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's
Quite a journey.
It is. It's a journey, but it's
like you said, there's the constant of connection and closeness to church. All different kinds of churches. But now it is a really central part of your life.
It is. It is. And now, but the funny thing I'll say about that is, and this doesn't have to be for someone who's a professional religious person at all. When I do non-church or non-religious things, it's like, I don't know, it enriches so much now. When I just go to a movie or if I go to food, really staying close to a spiritual life and the spiritual path and helping it inform the decisions I make and how I see people and treat people has actually had a lot of tremendous advantages in my health and in my well-being and in my mental health. That's a big change from when I was a lawyer.
Well, and like you say, you don't have to be an ordained clergy person to live life in that way.
Right.
To have your spiritual life be kind of the center of it all, and to let that guide and bring meaning to all the different parts of your life.
Exactly.
That surround it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here, TJ, and for sharing some about the journey that brought you here to Dallas. It's always interesting to hear ministers' call stories because they're all so different.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us for this episode of Tiny Pulpit Talks. You can always like us and subscribe and leave reviews of the podcast. Comment if you have questions for TJ, maybe.
Absolutely.
You want to hear more about some part of his story. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you on Sunday. Thank you.
Bye-bye.